On Thanksgiving Day, right when everyone was raising their glasses for a toast, my younger sister, Jenna, stood up, tapping her spoon against her wine glass to make a sharp ding. She lifted her chin, declaring loudly as if she were accepting an Oscar. Mom and Dad are officially signing this house over to me, and as for Emily, she won't be getting anything. The room exploded instantly. Cheers and whistles filled the air. Someone even shouted, "It's about time. Should have done this ages ago." My mom dabbed at her eyes, overcome with emotion, while my dad patted Jenna on the shoulder, bursting with pride. They waited for my reaction. They were waiting for anger, jealousy, or at least a tear of humiliation. But I didn't clap. I didn't blink. I just looked at Jenna and smiled. It wasn't a bitter smile. It was the smile of a weatherman who knows for a fact a Category 5 hurricane is making landfall, while everyone else is busy sunbathing. Because I knew a secret they were trying to bury. The roof might belong to them, but the foundation was rotting away under a mountain of debt. I slowly set my fork down on the china plate, making a small clink that was just loud enough to cut through the noise. I looked straight into my dad's eyes and said, very softly, "Dad, should I tell them? Or are you going to do it yourself?" The effect was instant. The color drained from my dad's face. Jenna's smile froze on her lips. And in that moment, silence wrapped around the room, so heavy you could hear the clock ticking. Everyone realized something terrible was about to happen. My name is Emily Nolan. And if you looked at my family before that fateful dinner, you'd think we were picture perfect. But you know, families like mine don't break apart with loud screaming matches. We crack in silence, in the small choices about who gets heard and who gets ignored. My whole life, I lived in that quiet space where people only notice you when they need something. Jenna, my sister, never knew that space. She was the golden child, the sun the whole house revolved around. Jenna was bright, loud, and charismatic, the kind of girl relatives always swarmed around praising her natural talent. I didn't hate Jenna for that. I just learned early on that I had to build my own life because nothing would ever be handed to me the way it was handed to her on a silver platter. Growing up, I watched my parents pour all their attention and money into Jenna like they were watering a rare plant. Dance classes, summer camps, private lessons, things that, when I asked for them, were always met with, "We can't afford it." Later, when I moved to Chicago to work and be independent, they called me selfish, as if choosing not to be a burden was somehow abandoning them. Meanwhile, Jenna stayed close to home, continuing to live comfortably in the perfect mold my parents had carved out for her. However, I still came home for the holidays, mainly for Grandma Evelyn. She was the only one in the family who looked at me with genuine pride. When she hugged me at the door, it wasn't out of obligation, it was out of understanding. She used to pat my cheek and whisper, "You're stronger than they think." That sentence was the fuel that got me through years of being the black sheep. If you've ever been the sibling who had to figure it all out while the other one got spoiled, leave a comment saying, "I get it," down below. We aren't alone. The issue with the house actually started 6 months ago, long before that shocking announcement at Thanksgiving. It was a sweltering Saturday in June when Mom called, demanding I come home immediately for something important. No details, no warning. When I arrived, they led me straight to the dining table, the very table where everything would later collapse. Dad had a folder laid out like he was presenting a major project. Mom was smiling so hard I felt like her face muscles must hurt from the strain. "Sweetheart," Dad started, his voice suspiciously sweet. "We are refinancing the house. We just need a simple signature from you to secure a better interest rate. You won't have to worry about a thing." Right then, a defense mechanism kicked in. My family never asked for my help unless they needed more than they were willing to admit. I picked up the stack of papers, heart pounding, trying to make sense of the numbers dancing in front of me. Something was very wrong. Too many pages of dense text, too many numbers blacked out, and Dad's explanation was too rushed. I kept my voice as calm as possible. "Can I take these papers home? I'd like my lawyer to look them over." The immediate silence said it all. Mom's smile vanished. Dad snatched the folder back way too fast, like he regretted ever showing it to me. "It's just a formality," he pleaded. "Why do you always have to complicate things?" But I insisted on taking that folder. I didn't know it then, but taking those papers out of the house that day was me lighting the fuse on the bomb that would destroy my family's perfect facade. The next morning in Chicago, my lawyer flipped through the pages, her eyebrows rising higher with every line. She didn't smile, and she didn't beat around the bush. She called me and said one sentence that made my blood run cold. "Emily, this isn't refinancing. This is a transfer of debt liability. If you sign this, you will be fully responsible for their debt." Debt? I was stunned. The lawyer explained every devastating detail slowly and clearly. A massive second mortgage, months of missed payments, and foreclosure warning letters piling up. Things I never knew existed. The moment I understood the truth, something inside me locked down. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was a cold, steady feeling. My parents didn't want to share the house or any inheritance with me. They were drowning, and they were trying to push someone else underwater to use as a life raft. 2 months later, Dad called again, this time asking for money. He made up a story about Mom's hospital bills. But when I offered to pay the hospital directly, he crumbled. The truth leaked out. Debt, deadlines, absolute desperation. And now, sitting at this Thanksgiving table watching Jenna glowing under the lights and everyone's praise, the weight of that truth pressed on my chest. I realized their cruel plan. When I, the designated safety net, refused to sign, they shifted the target to their innocent golden child. They weren't gifting Jenna a house. They were gifting her a massive debt. And they expected me to sit quietly, smile, and watch my sister walk into a trap. By November, the secret about the debt lay between me and my parents like a live wire. We stopped talking about the papers I refused to sign. Conversations shrank to polite small talk about the weather, as if chatting could fill a crater. They didn't know I had done more than just refuse. I had quietly pulled the property records myself. I knew all about the second mortgage, the interest eating them alive daily, and the foreclosure clock ticking down. Jenna started posting vague statuses on social media. Photos of her standing on the porch with Mom and Dad, captioned with "big changes coming" and jokes about "ready to be a homeowner." Every post was like another piece of the tragedy falling into place. The breaking point was a week before Thanksgiving when Mom called, bragging about how excited Jenna was to host parties more often once everything with the house is settled. She said it so lightly, as if the house were a precious heirloom, not a ticking time bomb wrapped in pretty paper. That night, I stopped hoping they would fix it themselves. I sat down at my desk, opened my laptop, and hit print. I prepared a thick folder. Copies of overdue payments, penalty notices from the bank, and most importantly, the debt summary page. My plan wasn't to humiliate them. My plan was to ensure no one could say I didn't know when everything came crashing down. Thanksgiving morning, I drove home with the folder sitting quietly in my bag and a rock in my stomach. Mom greeted me at the door with a tight hug smelling of perfume mixed with stress. "You look great," she said. "Jenna will be so happy to see you here." The way she said "Jenna will be happy" instead of "we are happy" told me exactly where I stood in this house. Inside, the dining room was set like a grand stage. The table was extended, the crystal glasses sparkled, and every seat was taken, except mine. Grandma Evelyn caught my eye from her usual spot. She gave a slight nod, small but loaded with meaning, as if she knew more than she was letting on. I slid into my seat. My hand brushed against the bag at my feet. The rough texture of the paper against the canvas was a stark reminder. This was evidence against denial. Jenna floated around like the star of the show, adjusting the tablecloth, whispering jokes to Mom. If they were determined to turn this dinner into a performance of a fake happy family, I had decided on my role. I would no longer be the silent supporting character. I took a deep breath, felt the weight of the truth at my feet, and waited for the curtain to rise. And then, the moment arrived. Jenna stood up, tapping her fork against her wineglass. Ding, ding, to command attention. Mom and Dad are officially signing the house over to me, Jenna announced, her voice ringing through the room. And Emily won't be getting any part of it. The room erupted before the meaning of her words even sank in. Cheers, applause. I didn't touch my wineglass. I didn't even blink. I just looked at Jenna and smiled. Not a warm, open smile, but the kind of smile that holds the weight of all the brutal things about to be said. I slowly lowered my fork to the plate, making a dry, metallic clatter. I looked straight into Dad's eyes and asked, my voice soft but echoing, "Dad, should I tell them? Or will you do it yourself?" The effect was immediate. My sentence was like a blade cutting the power cord to the entire room. Everything dropped into a silence so heavy I could hear the fireplace crackling. Dad's hand slipped, his fork hitting his plate with a crash. Jenna's smile vanished, her face scrunching in confusion. Tell us what? Around us, relatives leaned forward, smelling the drama. Grandma exhaled sharply, as if she had been waiting for this moment. The moment someone, anyone, stopped pretending everything was fine. I reached down, pulled the thick folder from my bag and placed it neatly in front of me. I didn't open it yet. I just let it sit there, resting quietly on the pristine white tablecloth like a silent threat. Before everyone raises a toast to Jenna owning the house, I said, my voice as calm as if I were reading a menu. You should probably know the exact condition of this generous gift. My dad looked like he was about to lunge for the folder, but I was faster. I flipped it open, revealing papers covered in glaring red bold text. I slid a sheet toward the center of the table, right in Jenna's line of sight. They are behind on payments, I said, pointing to the summary line. Not one, but 2 mortgages. The second one was taken out in secret. This house is currently in pre-foreclosure. It could be months, or maybe just weeks away from being taken by the bank. Mom covered her mouth with her hand, her face completely pale. Dad turned a deep shade of purple. Jenna blinked rapidly, like she had just been slapped. That's not true, she stammered, her voice shaking and high-pitched. They would have told me. Mom and Dad said it was a gift. I looked my sister in the eye, my gaze steady. Did they tell you the house comes with over $100,000 in debt? That the second you sign those transfer papers, you become legally responsible for every cent of those overdue penalties? Doubt started to creep into Jenna's eyes. Dad tried one last desperate save. You're blowing this out of proportion, Emily. We are handling it. Handling it? I held up another paper stamped with the bank's red seal. Because this paper says the bank doesn't believe you're handling anything. It was never a gift, Jenna, I said softly. It was their escape hatch. They needed someone to take the fall for the debt. First, they tried to trick me. When I refused, they chose you. Jenna stood frozen in her sequined dress, her whole body trembling. But the fatal blow didn't come from me. It came from the person next to her. Tyler, Jenna's fiancé, quietly pushed his chair back, creating distance between them as if she were contagious. Did you lie? Tyler asked. Mom was sobbing. Dad had his head down. That was answer enough. Tyler stood up, his voice shaking between anger and shock. You told me the house was paid off. You said we'd have a clean slate. You intended to make me start our marriage on a sinking ship? Tyler, please, Jenna begged, reaching out. But Tyler backed away. I'm not marrying into this mess. The whole room held its breath as he stepped over the turkey platter, walked straight to the front door, and didn't look back. Jenna collapsed into her chair, mascara running down her cheeks. This isn't my fault, she whispered. I didn't know. Dad slammed his hand on the table. You ruined everything, Emily. I looked at him and replied coldly. No. You ruined everything the moment you decided to hand your debt to your children as an inheritance. At that moment, Grandma Evelyn slowly stood up, her voice thin but commanding. I taught you better than this, Daniel. Your daughters are not life rafts for you to cling to when you're drowning. Right then, a knock echoed from the door. Firm, decisive. The door opened and a woman in a business suit walked in. A badge clipped to her belt. Mr. and Mrs. Nolan, I'm an investigator from the Financial Fraud Division. We received a report regarding fraudulent loan applications. I need to ask you a few questions. The room erupted in confusion for the second time. Mom nearly fainted. Dad went white. I sat still, breathing slowly. Did they think this arrival was a coincidence? No. I had sent the file 3 days ago. This wasn't random karma. This was checkmate. As the investigators stepped into the house, whatever remained of the happy family facade finally shattered. Every question about late payments and hidden mortgages made the room feel smaller. Relatives started to scatter, avoiding my parents like they were fleeing a fire. When the investigator left with a pile of documents, the house fell into a heavy silence. Mom tried to reach for me, but I was already standing up, putting on my coat. Jenna whispered, "Don't go. I'm still here." I looked at her, then at my parents, and said my final words, "I won't stay to listen to these lies anymore." In the weeks that followed, everything changed completely. My parents were forced to face the reality they had been hiding from. The house was sold to pay off the debts. They moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of town, living quieter than ever before. No more grand declarations, no more illusions about a golden child. Jenna started therapy. Tyler didn't come back. She calls me often now, sometimes to cry, sometimes just to sit in silence over the phone. She says she finally understands why I stopped letting Mom and Dad decide things for me. As for me, I learned a lesson I should have known years ago. Speaking the truth isn't betrayal. Hiding it is. And families built on denial will always collapse eventually. I don't regret ruining that Thanksgiving dinner. I only regret not doing it sooner. I saved my sister from a future of debt. And more importantly, I saved myself from the role of the sacrificial child they tried to force me to play my whole life. If you've ever had to stand alone at a dinner table full of people who claim to love you but are actually using you, let me know your story. What would you have done in my shoes? Share in the comments below and subscribe to hear the next story.